Hi, I'm Shreya Chandan. For my Girl Scouts Gold Award, I am focusing on the issue of youth substance use. This parent presentation is for parents and will be focusing on the topic of youth substance use. The purpose of this presentation is to 1. Educate you, the parents, about drugs in the brain, 2. Inform you on how you can get involved in prevention to help your children make the right decisions, and 3. How to create an environment in which your kids are more comfortable to have conversations and reach out to you for help regarding drug use. So, this presentation is more geared towards parents because students already have a lot of structure and resources at school through substance abuse prevention specialists, counselors, and teachers to learn about these topics and also reach out to get any help if necessary. However, there is a disconnect in that parents have limited knowledge in substance use in middle and high schools, which makes it difficult for kids to reach out to you guys for help, but also have open conversations on topics like this. Also, even if your child does not end up experimenting with drugs, as a trusted adult in the community, it is your responsibility to be there for other kids as well. So, there does exist a lot of stigma and stereotypes regarding substance use, such as the type of people who can get involved in it, how using affects a person's behavior, and how addiction morphs its user. To be completely honest, anyone, and I really mean anyone, can get drawn into using drugs and fall prey to addiction. Moreover, because youth's minds are not fully developed yet, it is even more likely for them to start using. Again, I really want to emphasize that experimenting with drugs and addiction can happen to anyone. It doesn't depend on your age, race, color, or socioeconomic background. So it is important for you as parents to be equipped with these skills to talk with their children and also create a great system for them. First off, we're going to be talking about the common drugs. Drugs are any substances that change a person's mental or physical state. Some are medicines which are prescribed by doctors, while others are used recreationally. In the world of substance use and addiction, only one thing is certain: it will never stop changing. As old drugs fade away, new generations of products continue to emerge. Moreover, substances will continue to pose a threat to the physical and mental well-being of youth if the environment in which they are treated is not changed. Alright, so what are the most common drugs and how do teens get drugs? Well, the three most common drugs right now, today, as I said before, drugs are always changing, but at this moment, in 2021, the three most popular drugs are alcohol, e-cigarettes, and illicit drugs. So alcohol is the most commonly used substance among young people in America and includes beer, wine, and something that's very popular among the youth is flavored malt alcohol, which is a sweet tasting blend of alcohol and carbonated fruit juice, which may seem like soda pop, but the truth is, even though youth are led to believe that the alcohol levels in these soda-like drinks are of a lower concentration, youth still consume them at high rates, hence consuming tons of alcohol. Next, we have e-cigarettes. So, cigarettes used to be one of the most popular drugs, but as technology has evolved and time has moved on, e-cigarettes is the new generation of drugs that have been introduced as well. And e-cigarettes are just electronic devices that stimulates traditional smoking, but through inhaling vapor. And these vaping products are designed to deliver harmful chemicals through vapor. A cartridge contains nicotine, flavors, and other chemicals. Vaporizers heat this and turns it into vapor, which users can inhale. A big misconception is that this vapor produced from e-cigarettes is harmless, just like water steam, but that is completely not true. Cartridges contain harmful chemicals which continue to change. Again, even though we've transferred from cigarettes to e-cigarettes, even within e-cigarettes, the type of technology and chemicals within that are also changing. Now, illicit drugs are also pretty common among youth. And they are very strong drugs, very strong and highly addictive. Even with small doses, they can have very powerful effects. And this includes heroin, marijuana, and meth. Now, you may be wondering, great, these are the most popular drugs, but how do my kids, how do youth get access to that? How are they able to use these sorts of drugs? Well, there are multiple ways which youth can access these common drugs, including they can get it from friends or family members. Some give it to them, some acquire these drugs unknowingly, but other friends and family members are okay with it and they voluntarily give it to them. Youth can also get these drugs from older friends who can legally buy for them. And some stores, unfortunately, do not check age, and some students have fake IDs, which allows them to attain these drugs. And some students do sell drugs at school, known as drug dealers. And so these are the most common ways that students and your kids are able to access drugs. Now you may be asking, is this actually something my kid will come into contact with? And to answer your hypothetical question, yes. And we will be looking at some statistics shortly. But one thing I want to emphasize is that even if your child is not the one experimenting with substances, it is highly likely that the people around them are using drugs or at least talking about it. Whether it be in school, on social media, or through their peers, I am sure that your children are going to come into contact with at least conversations about substances, if not use them. So first, we can look at some statistics from the Monitoring the Future survey. So the Monitoring the Future survey is funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, and conducted by the University of Michigan. And it measures substance use and related attitudes among students nationwide. More than 11,000 students have been surveyed from 112 schools across the nation, and these are some of the statistics. Amongst 12th graders, we can see that within the past month in 2020, more than 33% of 12th graders, 20% of 10th graders, and around 10% of 9th graders had used. If you look at alcohol use within the past year, we can say that 55% of seniors, 40% of sophomores, and 20% of 8th graders have used. Overall, these rates have increased within the past 4 years. At any sort of vaping within the past month, if you look at it over the past year, there's been a little bit of decrease from 2019 to 2020. A shift to virtual schooling was probably responsible for this, as students' use of e-cigarettes usually occurs in schools. There's been an overall decrease among seniors, but an increase in 8th graders and sort of a leveling of 10th graders. But it's still a substantial amount. 22%, 18%, and 8% have reported using illicit drugs within the past month across the nation. Now, if you look at the past year, these rates are even greater at 36%, 30%, and 15%. Now, specifically within Northern Virginia, specifically FCPS, the youth survey is conducted by Fairfax County Public Schools in collaboration with the Fairfax County government. Last year, more than 33,000 students were surveyed. If you look at FCPS specifically, 20% of 8th graders have reported using alcohol in their lifetime, 4.5% in the past month. 10th graders, 33% within this lifetime, and 12th graders at 49%. Around 50% of 12th graders in FCPS have reported using alcohol within their lifetime. Now, if you look at vaping, also known as e-cigarette use in 8th graders, there has been a little bit of decline from 15% to 13% within their lifetime, but again, there is still a group of students engaging in this activity. In 10th graders, 25% have reported using it in their lifetime, and 12th graders, 37% have reported using it in their lifetime. Among seniors in 12th grade, we see that, again, marijuana use is really high. The main reason why kids are more likely to experiment with drugs and fall into addiction is quite honestly their brain. Now, the brain is made up of many parts that all work together as a team. Each of these different parts has a specific and important thing to do. But when drugs enter the brain, they interfere with its normal tasks and can eventually lead to changes in how well it works. The adolescence is a time of significant growth and development inside the teenage brain. The main change is that unused connections in the thinking and processing part of your child's brain are pruned away. And now this makes the brain more efficient. And we can see in this graph that from the ages of around 13 to 22 is when a lot of change is occurring in the brain. A lot of this gray matter is being reduced, making the brain more efficient. Usually, when we make decisions, it relies on our prefrontal cortex. However, the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that is going under a lot of changes and is perfected last in this period of time. Because the prefrontal cortex is still developing, teenagers rely on the part of the brain called the amygdala to make decisions and solve problems. Now, the prefrontal cortex is more logic-based, while the amygdala is more emotional and behavior-based, which leads to impulses. And because of this, the decisions that adolescents make is more based on their emotional feelings and their behavior and can be more impulsive. Drugs also affect how the brain develops. A neurotransmitter releases something to communicate and a receptor receives it, and this is how the communication cycle works in the brain. But when drugs, which are just chemicals, enter the brain, they tap into the brain's communication system and tamper with the way information is sent, received, and processed. Different drugs can work in the brain by imitating the brain's natural chemical messengers and overstimulating the reward circuit of the brain. So not only is there short-term effects, but the drugs can affect how the brain develops overall. Addiction is a chronic brain disease that causes a person to take drugs repeatedly despite the harm it may cause. Drugs often start as a recreational activity. However, repeated drug use can alter the brain, driving a person to make impulsive choices regardless of the consequences. Now this video, Nuggets, is a great representation of how addiction works. There's two main cycles or effects that are working to keep addiction going. The first is the pleasure effect. And so this is when drugs take control of the brain's reward system, releasing large amounts of dopamine. And the brain remembers this feeling and sends out an intense motivation to seek out and use drugs again. And we can see this as the kiwi floats in the air every time it consumes the drug, which is the large amounts of dopamine, or more commonly known as a high. And once it comes back down, As time progresses, the motivation to get to the next nugget increases, so the kiwi goes from walking to sprinting. Now, the other effect is the repeat effect. And after repeated drug use, the brain starts to adjust to these surges of dopamine. As a result, the ability to feel pleasure is reduced. So we can see this as even though the kiwi is consuming the same portion of nuggets, the highs that it is experiencing are shorter and shorter, and the falls once the high is done gets harder and harder and harder. And so this is a repeat effect. Now, in the normal world, in order to compensate for this, to feel the same high like they did the first time, drug take is increased and the toxic cycle continues. Unfortunately, this often ends up in overdose and death. So, no one starts as an addict. It starts through a stage of curiosity and excitement, which is known as a recreational part. It's just wondering, what is that magical thing that everyone is talking about? I'm sure nothing will happen if I try it just once. Next, it goes on to a habit. This is something that they do on a regular basis, and they don't necessarily need it, but it definitely makes life feel better. And finally, addiction. This is when the user cannot live without it. The disease of addiction consumes them, and they're unfortunately stuck in a toxic cycle which they cannot be released of without seeking or receiving help. And so these are the three main stages of drug use. To be completely honest, your kids are going to get information about drugs from somewhere. Hopefully, it's from a trusted resource like a teacher or a website, but often it is their friends or social media, which can be misleading. So it is extremely important that you, as their parents, have these conversations with your kids early on. At the age of 10 would be ideal, as this is when most kids are heading into middle school or start to hear about these sorts of things. It is important that kids receive this information, which can be threatening or alarming, from someone they can trust, their parents, so they can come back to you for more conversations and questions. The one thing I want to emphasize is to create a safe environment where your kids are not only willing but also enthusiastic to discuss these difficult topics with you as their parents. The first thing I want to talk about with your kids is the brain. Teach about their brain, how it works for them and works against them. Adolescence is the time where the brain is developing, and this is great because you get to intake so much information, but it also sucks because your brain isn't fully developed and your decision-making skills are very subpar. These two books are a great resource to learn more about the teenage brain and talk to your kids about this. Another thing is you want to talk to your kids about outlets. You want to talk to them how to form better habits and get high through healthier ways. These are also two great books, Atomic Habits by James Clear and A Better High by Matt Bellis. And these are great conversations, topics to have with your kids as well. Now, you want to make sure that as parents, you have regular opportunities to talk with your kids. Don't let them escape. And especially when it comes to difficult issues like substance use, addiction, peer pressures, and sexuality, don't wait for them to start the conversation because often they never will. You want to talk through decisions step by step with your child and emphasize the immediate and long-term effect of their actions. As I talked about before, the part of their brain responsible for their future is still developing, and so as parents, if you can structure and talk to them about the short-term effects and long-term effects of their decisions, it'll make it easier for them to make better decisions. We know that parents who make values known, like not using substances until 21, their kids are less likely to engage in those activities as they know their family's values. As a parent, another thing you want to do is encourage good sleep habits. Kids need between 8 and 10 hours of sleep every night. Now, sleep might seem like a minor thing, but it can have dramatic effects including mental well-being, risks of depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. As a parent, another thing you can do with your kids is help create a stress management plan with them. The three main steps I like to walk through is reevaluate, reframe, and reset. Is this a real threat or does it feel like a temporary threat? Help your kids reframe the moment. At this moment, what can I do about this? What do I have control over at this second, and how can I move forward? Teach your kids how to take a deep breath, compose themselves so they're able to move forward and not get stuck in that moment. It's important to do this because kids often resort to drugs again and again because of stress. And walking them through the stress management plan will help them understand what stresses are actually a big deal or something that they're just dramatizing in their mind. As a parent, it is important for you to be attentive. It's easiest for you to identify if they're struggling with some substance use issues, with some mental health issues, and things like that. The four main things is shifts in mood and personality, behavioral changes, hygiene and appearance, and physical health. These are all symptoms that you can look for in your kids. Now, everyone is different, and these symptoms can't and will differ even within the same child over a period of time. Also, keep in mind that drug use can be a coping mechanism of stress or mental illnesses, and so don't mistake all these symptoms for immediately my child is using substances. It can just be their symptoms to a different issue in their life. In the end, you know your child best, and it's important to have these conversations with them so that they know how to manage their stress properly so that these symptoms can be taken for what they are. So if you know that your kid or any other child needs help, this is the best way to approach it. First thing you want to do is recenter. An analogy I like to use is on airplanes, they tell you to place your own oxygen mask first before assisting others. As a parent, you have to be in the right headspace to have conversations about substance use. The last thing you want to be doing is putting more stress on your child or anybody who comes out to reach for help for you. Just don't care about what other parents or other people might think of you. Focus on doing what's best for your child or the person in need. Don't take any self-pity. In the end, this substance use issue is not your fault as a parent, so just make sure you're in the right mindset when you're approaching this issue. 2, you need to listen. Be open and do not judge what they have to say. Encourage your kids to come back to you and have these discussions over and over again. But also remind them that they have a strong support system. They're not alone, and as their parents, you're not the only one there that can support them. Remind them of their coaches and teachers and mentors and family friends that are also there for them, and if they need anything, there's so many people they can reach out to. 3, inform them. Inform them of the reasons or causes for their substance use issue and educate them on different ways that they can get help. 4, support them. Whatever you do, do not give up. The process to recovery of either addiction, recreational, or habitual use is really difficult and it's different for everyone. In the end, the user is only ready to get help and will benefit from that process the most when they themselves are ready to take that step. So support them through however long it takes. Of course, be respectful. Even if you're not the one in the situation of either the user or the person who's trying to help, you need to be socially responsible. Do not judge. Honestly, it's not your place. Reaching out for help and assisting someone who's help is not easy whatsoever. And so do not make this any harder on the user or the helper in any way possible. Think of it like this. If you are in that situation, how would you want to be treated and how would you want to receive or not receive feedback from anybody else? So just be respectful and socially responsible in how you talk about other people and the issues they might be going through. These are some great resources. Of course, your school district is a great place to start. Specifically in FCPS, we have these amazing people called substance abuse prevention specialists, which actually specialize in substance use issues. And so reaching out to them would be a great option. Now, to educate yourself, the Truth Initiative is great. NIDA for Teens, Ask, Listen, and Learn are all great resources. The Partnership to End Addiction and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration are also great resources as well. Remember, if there is an emergency that is life-threatening, always call 911 first. Or else, these are all some great places to learn more and educate yourself about substance use, but also reach out to get help. I do have a website at youthsubstanceuse.com, which has all the topics we've covered in today's presentation. And it goes into more depth. You can find so many links for resources there, but also really insightful information. it is quite honestly a great place to get started to have these conversations with your kids. This website is a great resource for not only getting educated, but also a great first step for getting involved as well. Thank you so much for listening to today's presentation. I really do hope that you take what you've learned today and go have that conversation with your kids and tell more parents about this. Youth substance use is a really big issue across the nation, and as of now, it's not going anywhere. So it's important that as parents, you take the first step to having those conversations with your kids. Again, thank you so much, and make sure to check out my website at youthsubstanceuse.com